Um, how many of you think that, imagine Father God for a second looking down on this group of people tonight. How many of you think that he looks and thinks, right, well, I've got something to say to you, but I ain't got anything for you tonight. So you're here, but I've not really got anything to say. Can we all believe tonight that actually Father God has got something to say to you? And it may not necessarily be what I say, but have you ever noticed how someone tells you a thought, and then that triggers that thought, and that triggers that thought, and that triggers that thought? And sometimes we end up hearing not what someone said, but what was going on in us. So I need you to help me tonight by actually believing that through what I say, be it what I say or what you hear within what I say, that actually there's something for you individually to take away with you tonight. Who thinks that sounds like a good idea? Right. Now, I've been thinking about a few stories in the Bible over the last couple of weeks and trying to pull some thoughts together. And couldn't decide which of them I was going to talk about, so I've decided I'm just going to talk about all of them. So you'll probably be out about 11 o'clock. Is that all right? No. I'm going to skim the surface of a few, and then you can go and look at it in more detail for yourself. But they're all great stories, and if you don't know the Bible very well, you'll get a bit of a taster for some of the stories that are in there that you can go and have a look at. Now, my opening thought tonight is that if you've remotely been here, you will know that this is a house that is very passionate about grace. Not this wishy-washy idea of grace, but actually grace in its rawest, truest form. And what we're discovering about that is that grace and forgiveness is absolutely wonderful until you have to give grace and forgiveness in areas where you think, but I don't want to give grace and forgiveness to that. Now, don't all look at me so holy. We all do it. There's areas where we think, oh, eek. It's wonderful, isn't it, that grace is available for all, but sometimes when that water's in our boat, all of a sudden it's a little bit trickier to work that out. Because sometimes people really mess with us sometimes, don't they? And they hurt us. And sometimes we can all do it, but sometimes people can be cruel, thoughtless, disrespectful. Sometimes they can be downright selfish. Who's met somebody like that? Now, these people somehow know how to push our buttons, and we all have different buttons that push, but that somehow these people in that moment make our life harder, and they do things that, from where we're stood, are just totally uncalled for. And for most, if not all of us, our first reaction when this happens isn't, oh, but I forgive you. It's not, is it? That's not normally our first reaction. There is this part of us that somehow wants them to have to acknowledge what they have done and to put that right and to make up somehow for what they've taken and for the loss that we feel. Isn't that true? Now, that hurt that we feel somehow very quickly becomes this desire for payback somehow in some form, and we can dress that up all very pretty and all very holy, but that's what's at the root of really what we want to see. Now, surely when these things happen, the other person must acknowledge what they've done to us, to them, whoever your them are, that you feel this sense of injustice on behalf of, and put it right, and then I'll forgive. Isn't that sometimes what we think? Now, let me go to the first story that I was thinking about. Think about that woman caught in the act of adultery. I know Joel's spoken about it. I know we've heard quite a lot about that story. She is condemned by the crowd who want to use God's old covenant law to stone her. None of us want that when we read that story. And Jesus removes the condemnation and shame, and she gets a fresh start. He says, great, go and sin no more, start from fresh. Absolutely wonderful. And we like to think that if we'd been there, we would have agreed with Jesus. These people that want to stone her are just terrible, but I want her to go free. Now think about it just for a second, and let's just put ourselves in that boat. Now, we don't know the circumstances, as Joel was talking about a couple of weeks, but just imagine, what if you are stood at the back with these men with stones, and your sister was the wife of the unseen man in the story, the one who had the affair, or your daughter? Families stick up for each other, right? We all do. How would you feel about this Jesus guy showing this woman, amazing grace? Might that feel to you like Jesus was saying that your sister, your daughter's hurt and betrayal doesn't matter? It could be interpreted like that, couldn't it? Jesus could actually, from where you're stood, look very mean. Now, depending on where you stood, Jesus' actions are going to look different because it depends which end of the story that you are on. Let's think about Zacchaeus. Who's heard of Zacchaeus? Zacchaeus was a very little man, and a very little man was he? Zacchaeus was a very little man, and a very little man was he. If you want to look at the story, it's in Luke 19. Now, he was basically quite a corrupt guy. He was a tax collector, and he hears about this Jesus. For whatever reason, this guy gets some hope. Do you know what? I've screwed up some stuff in my life, but I've heard about this guy, and there's just something in him that thinks, I have to see this man. So because he's little and he can't see above the crowd, he climbs a tree. It's a great story. He climbs a tree to catch a glimpse of Jesus. And amazingly, Jesus is coming through crowds and crowds of people, and he spots the guy in the tree. I don't know if he threw an apple at him, but he spots him in this tree. And he actually then says, Zacchaeus, you there? You come down now because I'm coming to your house for tea. Now, it was quite a big deal if someone said they were coming to your house. That was a real mark of acceptance. This guy gets a fresh chance. He experiences this forgiveness. He says, I'm going to pay back everything I owe. Brilliant, fantastic, life-changing story. Imagine hearing that testimony. We'd all go, yay, brilliant. He's had a life-changing experience. Now, it says that the crowd began to murmur, to complain. And we think, oh, well, how awful that they're complaining. Right, now here we go again. Are you ready? What if you were a family that he extracted money from for years? What if it was you who was ripping off? What if the pressure was such that your partner so felt the strain that they couldn't cope, they became depressed, they start behaving destructively in whatever form? Your elder son steps in, your little boy, yeah? Who's now a big boy, but don't we always see them as babies? And he bears the weight of the family. In desperation, you're imagining, yes, but you're going with me. In desperation, he gets involved in criminal activity to make some money. He's caught, and he's now in prison. Younger children barely eat because you don't have any money, because Zacchaeus has taken it all. And you can just see how malnourished they're becoming. Your children are ill. Now, you've heard Jesus is in town, and you've heard tales of how this man takes pity on the poor, the abandoned, and the helpless. And you're going to bring your children, push through the crowd, hoping he will see you. And instead, he has pity on the man who got you in this mess in the first place. Are you getting where I'm going? It depends which end of the story you're on, how you see what this Jesus guy is doing. Because we can put a spin on the story to see the crowd as justified as seeing Jesus as this bad guy. Now, yes, this reformed man does pay you some of the money that he took from you as part of his turning over a new leaf. But your son's still in prison. Your partner's maybe never going to quite be the same again, because don't we sometimes end up with a limp? And that won't change now just because this guy has changed. Now, I'm not trying to depress you, but do you see my point? We sit in church and we think, if we were with Jesus and I'm with Jesus, we're always going to be the one stood on Jesus' side and seeing it. But maybe sometimes, just sometimes, we've got the wrong end of the story and we're missing out on something. We don't always see Jesus when the crowd murmurs around us. When the water's in our boat, or we are very good at feeling it on behalf of other people who we are close to, and when those associations and triggers seem unfair to us, and when grace to us seems scandalous, when it's like, oh, that person can't get grace because what they've done to me is just too awful. Now, we all have to be able to handle those perceived injustices in our world without forfeiting grace for all. And sometimes that can seem difficult. Have you seen what's happened with this reaction to Margaret Thatcher? There's a country, some people mourning her, some people celebrating, because it depends which end of the story you've been on. Memories, associations, stories, things passed down through generations. It depends on your viewpoint. Now, I'll go back to what I said at the start. Grace and forgiveness is all wonderful until someone's getting it that we don't think somehow should be getting it. So how do we handle such things in a way that does not cause us to become resentful and bitter of the very thing we proclaim to represent in a way that doesn't end up crippling us on the inside. And some of you I know tonight are seeing injustice around you and it hurts. You're seeing things that just don't fit with your understanding of what you think it should look like. Next story, right? The story of the two sons. Again, we've heard a lot about this, Luke 15. Some people, I know I've said this many times, but it's not the story of the prodigal son because there are two sons. Now, the prodigal son is the one that says, give me my cash now, I'm going to go and do my own thing. Off he trots, does his own thing, blows all the money, gets himself where he doesn't want to be, realises, do you know what, I was better off back with my dad, comes back, dad's waiting to greet him, puts a robe on his back, ring on his finger, says, come in, throws a massive party, thrilled that he's home, and the son is restored. Now, there's the older brother, isn't there, who, if you're familiar with the story, if you're not, it's Luke 15, go and read it tonight. Now, there's the older son who doesn't leave the home, who chooses to stay. We don't know how long that younger brother was away. Could have been 2 years, 5 years, 10 years. Could have been gone for like 20 years. We don't know how long he was away, but the older one stayed with his father. Now, most likely, his money is still going to be tied up in the estate. Who knows how much he supported his father, not only practically, but emotionally. You don't know. Had dad always been a bit depressed since the youngest son left? Was there a mother? We don't know, but all we know is that the eldest son had stayed and what you could say, done the right thing. Yes? He was there doing the day-to-day nitty-gritty while the other brother did what he wanted. Do you think he had a slight problem with that over the years? I think he possibly did. So, of course, he doesn't necessarily mind because probably he's the one getting all the affirmation for everything he's doing while he's there, maybe. And perhaps he took pride in the fact that, well, I've stayed and I've stayed by my dad's side. I suspect that he was probably loyal and he honoured his dad. His intentions were probably very sound. But something's simmering because when younger brother shows up, there's like this collision with perhaps this thing that's always sort of bubbled somewhere under the surface. And then younger brother comes up and he watches his dad treat this younger brother like some long-lost hero. And the brother who hadn't worked for it, who'd caused heartache and pain, who'd always somehow been there in the background, perhaps, and all of a sudden, it's not fair. His sacrifice, his faithfulness, had any of that mattered? Was there a point to it? It hurt, and then it made him really mad. And most of the time when we hurt, it makes us really mad. That's where we go quite quickly. Now, I don't think it was about the party. Because often, you said this to me 2 weeks ago, the reason we give is not necessarily the real reason that's going on. Sometimes we give a reason why we're mad, and it's not that reason. It's the reason beneath that reason, and beneath that, and that's really what the issue's about. Now, this was just the trigger point, yes? Some injustice, damage, loss, and I've lost my place, don't worry about it, something lurking, okay? Now, the father in this story isn't necessarily exactly how God is, but it certainly gives us a picture. And what I really love about this father is, you know how he went to meet the younger son? And when he was a long way off, he saw him. While this party's going on, he finds out that the older brother isn't coming in. He finds out, he's like, I'm not coming to this party for this younger brother who's not been around. And do you know what the dad does? He leaves the party, and so he goes and gets the older brother. And what I loved about that was it just shows this utter consistency within the father. When the younger son's away, he just wants to reconnect to the younger son. When the older son wobbles, he just wants to reconnect to the older son. The father's this beautiful centre in this story that says, I just want both my boys with me. And you know, tonight, he just wants all of his kids to be restored and to be with him. Now, the same dad who stood waiting, seeing the younger son from a long way off, had to leave the party to fetch the older one. And this is what he says to him. You're always with me, and everything I have is yours. And that also means everything of me, everything I am, is yours. And what he says to this older son, I don't think he says it like, well, what are you talking about? You're always with me. I think he probably said that very gently and very graciously. I think he probably maybe took his head in his hands as close as he could, and he said, And he reassured him, saying, look, you're seeing me loving your younger brother, but don't forget, it's the same for you, and you're just forgetting in this moment that me and you have been together all these years, and all of that still counts. Now, the older brother then has a choice. Is he going to be part of this restoring process and think, or is he going to be competitive? Is he going to be competitive with his dad? Or is he going to think, do you know what, you're right, Dad. I've got to experience you for the last however many years. Let's together go on and help. Because the younger brother's not just going to come back in and going to click back into family life just like that. He's going to have experienced some stuff, and he's going to need to come a journey, isn't he, to be able to settle back into that family home. And the elder brother could help with that. Now, by comparing his own virtues, I've stayed, I've been faithful, I've done this, and he hasn't. By comparing how brilliant he'd been with how bad his younger brother has been, he got himself into real difficulty. And let me urge you, never get into the trap of comparing how you have behaved compared to somebody else, because it'll always just get you into difficulty. The key thing is everything he is, we've always been with him, and everything he is and everything he has, we get to be part of. Right, let me move this on a bit. Now, this father had to celebrate his returning son, as his heart was to share who he was and his world with him. But he had not been withholding from the other son. But that older son who'd lived in his father's house somehow disconnected from who the father was. He'd forgotten. Perhaps in his familiarity as well, because he'd always been there, he no longer saw what was before him. And it really got me thinking, I am so grateful for all the questions that are surrounding everything I've ever believed in my whole life, and shaking things I was once so convinced about, because it has wrecked any familiarity I thought I had. I got none now, no, nothing. And I got very unsettled last week, not because I didn't think there was an answer to the questions I had about things, but because I knew I had to be prepared to let go of previous beliefs that I held so dear if that was required for me to see the real deal. Not the God I've needed him to be, or wanted him to be, or made him to be, but actually who he is. Because don't we want to see the Father for who he is? And if our perceived familiarity means that we can no longer see it, we've got to get rid of it. It's got to go. And some of you might be feeling very shaken by things you've been so familiar with your whole life, all of a sudden not being there. But if they have to go for us to see the Father again, then let's say good riddance. Yay! Yes? Should we say good riddance? What have we sung? We're never going back. Never going back. Because we want to see the Father. Now, the other thing that kept coming up in my mind all week, you know when sometimes you feel this real question, is when I was struggling with this stuff, I really felt God say to me, are you ready for a resurrection? I was thinking, didn't know I died. But then I got what he meant, because some stuff in me probably has died that needed to. But what happens on the other side of death when you walk with Christ? Resurrection, yeah? Resurrection to new life. To see again in my own spirit that nothing comes from working out who has done what, who has not done what, who's done what to who has been wronged, where the injustice is. If I am in the Father's house and everything he has is mine and everything he is mine, I'm not missing out. How can I be missing out? I can't be, can I? If everything he has is yours and everything he is yours, can you be missing out? Regardless of what anybody else is doing. Do we believe that, or isn't it hard? Who finds that hard to believe? You kind of believe me, but you're not there yet. Yeah? Will we see him or refuse to enter his celebration of grace when we see it for others? Because it just unsettles us. For some of you tonight, I know that this is true, that you live in God's house still, but you no longer see Father. Somewhere or other, you've been in the house, but you've lost who Father is. Next story. I think this is my last story. It is I thought I had one more page to go, and I don't. There you go. Right, last story, and it's lovely we sang that song tonight. There is life in the driest bones. Great story in Ezekiel, right? There's basically, to cut a long story short, there's this guy called Ezekiel. Ezekiel, that right? Ezekiel. And God takes him into a valley of dry bones, skeleton bones. And he asks him a question, and he says, can these bones live? If somebody took you to a bunch of skeletons, what's the guy that was found in York and, who was that, Richard the Third? If someone took you to Richard the Third's skeleton and said, can these bones live? What would your answer be? You'd say, would you say yes, love? Good for you. You believe in resurrection. The rest of them don't. Right. If you said, can these bones live? You would naturally have to say, no, don't think so. And it's basically this challenge where God's actually trying to get Ezekiel to think outside the box a minute and think, hang on a minute, if you've got God, there is life in the driest bones. Somehow this God of miracles. And what happens is these bones gradually, as God and Ezekiel talk to them together, they begin to take on flesh and tendons and nerves and everything else. And then what you end up with instead of bones is bodies that look like bodies. But then there's a problem because there's no breath in them. And the final stage of this transformation is that God's life is, Ezekiel speaks breath into them with God, and they actually come to life. And I got this real sense that sometimes some of us have the bones of us and God, and maybe the appearance of us and God, but do we still have the living breath of that today experience that actually is alive in us? Or has it all just become a bit flat? Do we need a resurrection, and are we ready to be resurrected in something new? Now, we've almost come full circle then from that full song. If there's life in the driest bones, where in you the things have died, and you get what I'm saying? Yeah? This is what came to me. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found, was blind, but now I see. Who is that true for in here tonight? Amazing grace. I once was lost. I genuinely believe tonight that some of us need a resurrection to see Father again. That in our familiarity and the things we've tried to hold on to, somehow we've lost that sense of life and the Father, and it's become about what other people have done, what other people might be doing, how other things don't seem very fair. And you know what? We cannot be selective with this grace. It has to be for all. And the people that you are seeing as awful might just be the Messiah. They might just be the Messiah. Everything he is and everything he has is yours, and you may have forgotten tonight. And so what I want to do, I'm sure you're going to come up and say something as well. What I want to do is I want to pray, because I believe some of you, there is a resurrection. That actually something in you can come alive again, and something in you can see Father again. But you might have to be willing to let go of some familiar stuff. And that might make you feel empty. But actually sometimes that's where we've got to go in order to actually get back to that experience that we might have lost. And you might be someone that feels like, well, I've been in here my whole life. I'm like that older brother. I've just done this and I've been faithful and everything else. And now I don't get why this is all right and this is all right and that didn't used to be all right. And why are all these things all right? And you've forgotten everything he has is yours. Everything he is yours. And you have been with him the whole time. And you get to now be part of restoring other people with God together. We get to treat each other like the Messiah. And I'd much rather be involved with that than standing outside the party because I can't bear to see the celebration of grace for other people. Shall we pray? Stand, sit, whatever. Lord, I want to thank you tonight that we have been with you the whole time, and that everything you have is ours, and everything you are is ours. And sometimes we look at things that seem so unfair and ways that people act that just seem completely beyond what we see as acceptable. And we end up stood on a side of the story where we don't see you. Or when we do see you, we kind of wonder what you're doing, Jesus. We kind of think, really? Is this really where we're going? But we are committed to seeing the real Father, because we know we cannot miss out on you if we embrace everything you are. And that you know how to iron out the stuff to ensure that all things work for the good of those who love you, and that we're not going to be left short because of how you amazingly invest into our life. So we commit again to trust you today. And I know, Lord, there's resurrections that you want to happen in people's spirits today, that there's people who are in your house but have lost your breath. So today, by your Holy Spirit, breathe life into them again. Get that revelation of you as their Father and their Saviour and their Lord alive in their spirit again. And whatever needs to go, because the familiarity is masking your true glory, Lord, give them the strength to let it go and live again in a new hope with new breath within them, Lord. And we just thank you for your scandalous grace, and we commit to it even when it hurts, because we know that it is worth it, and it's the only experience we want to have in restoring other people for this fantastic, fantastic grace that you designed to work in all of our lives. Thank you, Jesus. I'm done.
Thanks, Jen. All I want to say, just on the back of that, just to help some of you, is that I like wine. Something I appreciate, not for getting drunk. I like wine. What's interesting in the whole process of winemaking is that you take the grapes and you crush the grapes and you allow the sugars in the grapes to ferment and turn to alcohol. And the wine develops character and flavor and taste, which is quite unique. But if you just leave that wine to ferment without arresting its goodness, what you finish up with is vinegar. I mean, you know that vinegar is fermented. And wine vinegar is the next stage of what should have been for drinking that now becomes something bitter. And if you let it keep going, it becomes so bitter that it'll rot the tongue out of your mouth. So how fascinating that what started as grapes on the vine and became wine to bring joy can be the very thing that turns to bitterness and anxiety and causes you to reject the very thing that was once joy. What I noticed about what Jen said is that either side of it all there is a party. Whether it's lost sheep, lost coins, lost sons, there's a party somewhere there in the middle. Whether it's Jesus' crucifixion, there's a party somewhere there in the middle. Because you see, it's not about the crucifixion, it's about what the crucifixion was doing, which was the means to open the door to the resurrection, which started the party that said dead things can live. We can stop the decay, we can stop the bitterness, we can have the sweetness, we can have the wine. So whether it's the woman who was dealing with the issue of being accused, or whether it's Zacchaeus the tax collector and all he was struggling with, or the younger son, or Ezekiel, or whoever, the Apostle Paul said something very insightful. He said, don't let a bitter root grow up in you, because it will defile many. And I think our problem is that when we hit difficulty, we let a bitter root begin to grow in us. And so what used to be sweet, a relationship, a friendship, an association, a family, a connection, begins to become bitter when actually it's the same thing. The only reason it's become bitter is because in our heart we've allowed it to go somewhere where we should have never let it go. Paul's point was this: don't let a root of bitterness spring up. Kill the root. Deal with the root. Like Jenny said, deal with the thing behind the thing. Don't be like that older brother who's at the party but hating everything that's going on in the party, that everything that's happening every moment, every second causes him to become more bitter and more hurt because of what the father's doing for the son. Don't let it happen. But I do know in all of us that just like the dandelions in my lawn and the daisies, which I kill every year but they insist on coming back, I think there's a little dandelion demon that runs around at night and foils the best of my endeavors. Well, the truth is for all of us, whoever we are, the potential for this is in all of our lives. But God recognized that potential, and that's why he gives us by his Spirit not just forgiveness to us, but the ability and the power to forgive and to release and to let go. Trust me, you can do it. We just don't think we can because we're trying to do it in our strength, out of the measure of our love, out of the measure of our grace, rather than out of the measure of his love and his forgiveness and his grace, that then allows us to get on with things. Now, I'm going to give you a little insight on that, and then we're through. One of the mistakes we make in that is we like to predict what the outcome of that will be. So we like to say, well, if I do that, this has to be the outcome. That relationship must be restored, or that thing must come to me, or I must have that thing. You're not in control of that. Often other people are in control of what other people are in control of. But trust me, if you'll take care of business in your heart, the God of all grace will bless your heart. And you'll have a party in your heart. You won't miss the party. You won't be the wrong side of the party. You'll come into the party because dead things live again. So I want to pray for you tonight that if there is any root of bitterness in you that you have, it might even be towards yourself. Do you know, some of us can hardly go a day without remembering stuff that we did that was really stupid and dumb and foolish, and wish we could just go back and change that, and sometimes it won't leave us alone. So we become bitter towards ourselves. How many of you know God wants to heal that as well? So that you can actually forgive yourself, let yourself go, give yourself a break, because God's given you one. And for some of us, it's what others have done and what. Don't put an expectation on what you think should be the outcome of it, because the main thing is if your heart's healed, something's going to happen. Paul said, don't let a bitter root spring up, because it will defile people around you. Okay? It will affect people around you in a negative way. So what happens if you kill that root? It affects people around you in a positive way. Instead of defiling, it blesses, it brings life, it brings hope. So I guarantee you, when you let this happen in your heart, it's like there will be a sound wave of hope and blessing, and peace goes out from you. And God said something. He said, I'll restore everything that was devoured by the pests that come into your life. Can you believe that tonight? That God will restore everything that the pests came and ate in your life. I'm believing for it for you. I want you to believe it tonight. So let's just pray. Father, thank you for Jenny's word. Thank you for the content of it and the intensity of it. We receive it tonight in Jesus' name. And pray that as we make decisions that are hard for us, that every bitter root tonight will be poisoned by the love of God. Will be killed right to its core. So that what comes out of us is a wave of blessing and hope and peace and life, touching everything around us because it's touched us. So God, if we got away from the party, or we're mad at the party, or we're angry that somebody else is in the party, we let that go tonight in Jesus' name and say, help us to get back into the party, into the resurrection, into the dead things living again. Restore us today, as David wrote in his psalm, you restore my soul, and you prepare a table for me, even though my enemies are around. You prepare a feast for me, and my cup of wine doesn't become vinegar. It actually runs over with blessing, because goodness and mercy follow me all the days of my life. And right now we live in the house of the Lord. So I release that over the house tonight, Lord. Let every heart come to peace. Let every root that's bitter be destroyed, and let the party begin in Jesus' name. Amen. All right. Thanks, Jen. The Urban Rev guys, you can go now with Joel so that you don't get sidetracked. So if you're not already out there, which some are, please depart ye therefore over yonder. Other than that, hang around, chat to somebody, and if you're around on Wednesday night, we'll see you on Wednesday night. But thanks, bless you, it's good to see you.